And here we go on our Hey Mary Kay edition of the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Mary Kay, let's get right to it. Let's talk some Sheldon Richardson as we always do. We got a bunch of Sheldon Richardson questions, of course, but since those questions came in from our subscribers and since we record on this podcast, it appears Sheldon Richardson is heading for Minnesota. So, hey, Mary Kay, what happened with Sheldon Richardson?
Well, I was able to find out that what I do know at this point while we are recording this is that he's not coming back to Cleveland. A source told me he's not coming back here. He is ready for a fresh start, and it's time for him to move on. Now, as you mentioned, he could possibly be headed back to Minnesota. There was a report from a radio reporter, Jack Day, in Minnesota, that he could be headed to Minnesota. So we don't know as we're taping this for sure if that will happen, but it sounds like that there could be a good chance. So here's what happened. I believe that the Browns' offer to Sheldon Richardson, they made him another offer after terminating his contract in April, which they saved $12 million on the cap by making that move. They made him an offer, but it was one that he could refuse, actually. And I think it was probably more money than he's going to get if he re-signs with Minnesota. But I believe with Sheldon, it wasn't about the money. It was about the principle of the thing. The Browns released him at a large sum of money, and I don't think he wanted to walk back in here for the amount of money that they wanted to pay him. I think for him, it was time to say, okay, if that's the value that you put on me, then I'm going to be better off somewhere else. And as we know, he played in Minnesota in 2018. He was there before he came here. And I'm sure he likes Mike Zimmer a lot, the head coach who is the defensive coach. And I'm sure he likes a lot of the guys there. They just reworked defensive end Daniel Hunter's contract. So they've got some good guys on that defense. And I think it was just a matter of, even though this did feel like home to Sheldon Richardson, there is something about, having to walk back into a locker room where they significantly cut your pay. And I just think for him, he probably just felt that he wanted to go somewhere else and start fresh, where he felt that he was really valued and wanted.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because it did feel a little bit like, a team cut you. And obviously this is a business, and everybody knows that. Everybody involved knows that. And Sheldon, in hearing him talk, understands that more than anybody. But at the same time, I could understand if a guy feels a little bit of like, you guys cut me, you didn't want me. I don't want to come back and play for you. I don't want to come back. I don't want to come back and grovel for a job, I guess. Anyway, not to put words in Sheldon's mouth, but I saw that was kind of the first thing I thought when I saw that he might be signing elsewhere.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why I'm pretty confident that the Browns' offer was higher than what he's going to get elsewhere, because they really did want to re-sign him. They really wanted him back here, but they had a certain price. They had it capped, basically. And that's how good teams operate with their salary cap. That's how the Patriots do things, right? I mean, they will pay a guy a certain amount of money, and when it goes over what they have, their upper limit, then that's it. They're not going to do it. And so they had, right player at right price. And, as you mentioned, it probably didn't sit well with Sheldon. Now, it was different than what happened last year with Olivier Vernon. They just went ahead and restructured Olivier Vernon. He was supposed to make $15 million last year, and they restructured him and gave him $11 million guaranteed. So they weren't all that far off, and they guaranteed the whole thing. I just have a feeling that maybe Sheldon, that the number wasn't quite what he would have been looking for to make him overcome that feeling of, you cut me, you let me go. I wasn't good enough for you to pay those double-digit millions, and I'm going to go play somewhere else.
And these are the corrections that are going to happen here over the next few years. This team isn't going to be paying defensive tackles that amount of money unless you stumble across the next Aaron Donald or something like that. They're not going to be paying most normal defensive tackles that much money. We've talked about Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry endlessly on this podcast. They're not going to be able to pay two wide receivers over $30 million for that long, because you're starting to extend guys. You're starting to extend the players at key positions where you are going to invest your resources. So this probably isn't the first correction we're going to see over the next few off seasons.